All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into some fascinating verses from the Quran. Juz 11, to be precise.
Oh, Juz 11. Excellent choice.
And don't worry, we're not going full-on theology lecture here. This is about uncovering those little, often overlooked insights into, well, faith, actions, and how we interact, especially in groups,
Yeah.
all within this one section of the Quran.
You know, what's fascinating about Juz 11 is how it brings up these universal themes, right? Like Allah's power and mercy, that's a big one. But also this constant reminder that it's not enough to just believe. You have to act on those beliefs.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And of course, Juz 11 doesn't shy away from those, shall we say, less flattering aspects of human nature. Hypocrisy, for one. Well, something I think we can all relate to on some level, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
Mhm.
But speaking of relatable, the first verses we're diving into, verses 89 through 100, they paint this really interesting picture of the early Muslim community. We're introduced to the Muhajirin, the Ansar, the Bedouins, and you see this whole spectrum of belief within these groups.
It's really striking how the Quran depicts this diversity. You have some who are deeply, deeply devout, and then others, well, let's just say they were still figuring things out on their faith journey.
It's almost like that saying, all that glitters is not gold. It applies to faith, too. It makes you think, even today, in any faith community, you have that same range, right? Someone who hasn't missed a prayer, someone who's questioning everything.
And that's such a crucial point. Faith isn't this one-size-fits-all thing. It's a spectrum, a journey with different levels of understanding, commitment. We can't judge someone's faith based purely on outward appearances, can we?
Definitely not. It's about that inner transformation, which, speaking of judging, leads us to the story of the hypocrites and their mosque, verses 107 to 110.
Oh, now this is where it gets really intriguing. This group actually builds a mosque.
A mosque?
A mosque, a place meant for worship, right? But their intentions, completely the opposite. They wanted to cause harm, sow division within the community. Imagine that.
It's like building a monument to your own hypocrisy.
And that's exactly how the Quran portrays it. The hypocrisy is eating away at them. They have this physical structure, this mosque, a constant reminder of their deceit. It's a heavy burden to carry. Really makes you wonder, what is hypocrisy within a faith? Is it simply making mistakes, or is it about knowingly deceiving others and ourselves?
It's such a complex issue. And on a community level, how do you even begin to guard against that? How do you prevent that from happening?
It all comes down to self-reflection. Are our actions driven by genuine belief, a desire to do good, or something else entirely? Are we being true to ourselves and our faith? It's a question we all have to grapple with.
It's about aligning those outward actions with our inner beliefs, and that can be tough. But shifting gears a bit, let's talk about this concept of the price of paradise in verse 111.
Oh yes, this verse, it's powerful. This idea of Allah purchasing the lives and properties of believers in exchange for paradise. Powerful imagery.
It really makes you consider the weight of true commitment. It suggests this level of surrender, dedication that transcends even death.
Mm.
What do you think that level of surrender looks like in today's world?
That's a question that has echoed through centuries, hasn't it? Really makes you think, you know? Throughout history, across different faiths, different philosophies, we're all wrestling with this tension, this pull between what we want in this life and what we aspire to in a spiritual sense.
It's like this constant balancing act,
No,
even
no.
outside organized religion, right? You see people dedicating their lives to causes they believe in, often at a huge personal cost.
It's a testament to the power of conviction, absolutely. But, you know, speaking of commitment and conviction, verses 113 and 114, they bring up a very sensitive and complex issue. It's about the rules around seeking forgiveness, specifically for those who believe in multiple gods, polytheists.
Right, and this is something that, on the surface, might seem like a contradiction, because on one hand, believers are told not to ask forgiveness for polytheists, even if they are family.
Right. And it can be a difficult concept to grasp, especially when we think about the story of Abraham.
Exactly, because he pleads for his father's forgiveness, even though his father was a polytheist.
And that's where the nuance comes in, you see. Because Abraham's plea, it happened before he fully understood how strongly his father opposed a lot.
So it was before he really understood the extent of his father's beliefs.
Exactly. But once that became clear, Abraham distanced himself. And you can imagine that must have been incredibly difficult.
So it's about recognizing that line, that boundary, between showing compassion, which is obviously important, but also not condoning actions that go against your core beliefs.
Precisely. It really highlights those complexities, those gray areas that come with navigating religious obligations within our families, our closest relationships.
There are no easy answers.
None whatsoever. Each situation requires careful consideration, reflection, compassion.
It's a good reminder that faith, it's not just about blindly following rules. It's about seeking understanding, applying those principles with wisdom and, like you said, with compassion.
Absolutely, and that emphasis on sincerity, on genuineness, it echoes throughout Jews 11. Time and again, we see it's not about outward rituals, declarations, but the inner state of our hearts.
It's about that inner transformation. And you know what? That actually reminds me of the story of Jonah's city in verse 98. What always strikes me about that story is how Jonah's people, they were the only city spared, the only ones. And it all came down to their sincere belief and repentance.
It's an incredibly powerful example, isn't it? Jonah, at first, he's angry, frustrated. They didn't listen. But then they recognize their mistakes and they turn back to Allah with genuine remorse. Their hearts change.
And it completely changes their fate. They go from facing utter destruction to being the only ones spared.
Right.
And it all hinges on that internal shift.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this story so powerful. It speaks volumes about the transformative power of sincere belief. That potential for redemption is always there, even when we're faced with what seem like impossible odds.
It's like they were given a second chance.
Yeah.
It really highlights how, no matter how far we might stray, there's always that possibility to turn back, to realign ourselves.
It's a message of hope, definitely. A reminder that it's never too late to reconnect with our faith, to seek that genuine transformation, and this idea of aligning our actions with our beliefs. Wouldn't you say that's a central theme we see throughout Jews 11?
Oh, absolutely. It's woven throughout these verses. True faith, it's not just about the outward stuff, the rituals, the pronouncements. It's about that deeper connection. It's about integrating those beliefs into everything we do every single day.
Exactly. It's about that constant awareness, remembering that connection with the divine. And that's what makes Jews 11 so relevant, even today. So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what's that one key takeaway you hope our listeners really hold on to?
That's a good question. You know, if there's one thing I hope stays with our listeners, it's this: faith. It's not about reaching some finish line. It's a journey. It's about striving to live a life that's meaningful, a life that reflects those deep-seated beliefs and values.
Beautifully put. And like any journey, it requires introspection, that willingness to look inward, acknowledge our shortcomings, and then have the courage to keep growing,
To keep evolving.
to keep learning.
Exactly. And it's in those moments of reflection, those moments of growth, that we often discover a deeper understanding, not just of ourselves, but of the world around us.
So true. And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own exploration of these incredibly profound and timeless themes. Remember to keep seeking, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep diving deep into the knowledge that truly speaks to you. Until next time.